Hey, everybody. Good morning. It's Pastor Justin here. It is Sunday, and I hope you are doing well. I hope you had a great week coming on up to this day, leading up to this day. Listen, we got a message from Pastor Jeremy this morning that I'm excited to share with you. But before we get there, I just want to take a second to remind you that next week, for those people that are comfortable worshiping together, getting together at this point, we're going to have the church open, and it's going to be a worship service together in community here as a church family. So I would remind you of that, and I'd also give you a heads up. Check your emails. I'm going to be sending out in a couple of days a reminder of kind of the steps we're taking and what that's going to look like and all of those kind of things, just getting you some details for what you can expect. Because it's not going to look like what it has in the past right now. It will eventually, but right now we just can't do things quite like we have in the past yet. And I say yet because I fully expect that we're going to get back to a normal where we can have the same interaction. We don't have all these measures in place and all of that. And it's just going to take some time. So let's just be patient while we do that. You know, I had a thought this week that as we're processing all of this stuff and the inconveniences that it is right now and the frustrations that some of us might be feeling or whatever, I had this thought, and it goes like this. 10,000 years from now, in eternity future, what difference does this make? Or what is this whole thing going to be? It's going to be a blip on the screen. It's going to be nothing, honestly. It's going to be nothing. So in the scope of eternity, that's what I'm asking myself so often now. In the scope of eternity, what is this situation? Because the reality is that's probably a pretty good philosophy or way of operating in life. In the scope of eternity, what is this? And I can look at this and I can say, yeah, maybe I don't want to sing through a mask. Yeah, maybe I don't want to sit 6 feet away from somebody else. Or maybe I don't want this lobby area to have chairs in it. I want it to have people in it standing around, having community, seeing hugs or giving hugs and shaking hands and all of those great things. But for a couple of weeks, what is it? In the scope of eternity, what is what I'm experiencing? And I honestly believe that this is nothing in the scope of eternity. So while we might all have all kinds of different opinions, varying, wide-ranging opinions on what we need to be doing or how we need to be handling this or all of that, just put it in view of eternity. What is this in view of eternity? And I think when we look at it in terms of how we do church or what we're going to do in church, I think this is going to be a blip on the screen. And it really is going to be something that we look on and say, oh yeah, do you remember when we had to do that? But it really isn't going to make a big difference in our lives in the end. So I would just encourage you with that, and let's just, again, try and be patient with one another as we get through all of this, bearing up with one another in love and all of those things, because this is where we are right now. These are the steps that we're going to take, and I would just encourage you for right now, settle in this morning, listen to the word that Jeremy's got for us, and I cannot wait to be back here, even in those circumstances. I cannot wait to be back here with you guys, the ones that are comfortable, back here and worshiping with you next week. I love y'all.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Capitol Vineyard. My name is Jeremy. I am the assistant pastor here at Capitol Vineyard, and I am excited to be here with you guys this morning. This will be our last weekend of doing this thing virtually, right? Next weekend, like Justin just said, we get to get back into this building, back into our church as a community, and we're very excited about that. I'm very excited to see people again, be around you guys in this community again. Looking forward to that next weekend. Okay, so this weekend, I'm going to be talking about a Vineyard distinctive. Now, if you guys were with us about a year ago with this series, it was called Core. And in that series, Justin and I broke down some of these Vineyard distinctives. And those are ideas that the Vineyard USA movement was kind of built on. And so this week, we're going to be talking about one of those distinctives in particular, and that distinctive is ordinary people and extraordinary God. And that idea is basically just that our God is extraordinary, right? And I think that's an easy thing for us to believe, an easy thing for us to understand, that our God is extraordinary. And beyond that a little bit, though, is that God doesn't pick extraordinary people to do his work, right? Instead, kind of just the opposite happens, where God takes ordinary people and does extraordinary things through those people. So this morning, as we were talking about this, as I was looking at this distinctive and trying to figure out what to do, I was looking at stories like David and Moses, and I landed on doing this story of Noah, right? Noah and the ark. And I landed on that story because I think that so many things happen in this story, so many extraordinary things happen in this story that Noah could not have done on his own. It really is a good basis for us to look at it and say, man, that is just an ordinary dude that God is doing extraordinary things through. Okay, so let's just jump into this and let's read this story. It's Genesis 6, verse 9, and we're going to read through verse 20. If you'd like to open up and read with us, you're welcome to. All right, so here we go. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. He walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupt their ways. God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark out of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof on it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you. You will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female. Keep them alive with you, 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. All right, so Noah, recap that story. Noah is a faithful man, right? He's walking with God, and God comes to him and says that basically the world is corrupt, the world is destroying itself, and so I'm just going to destroy the world, okay? And I want to point out something here, that God actually says, for all people on the earth have corrupted their ways, I'm going to put an end to all people. He doesn't actually look at Noah and say, Noah, you're not corrupt, you're not wrong. He says that all people have corrupted their ways, okay? And so I don't think that excludes Noah particularly on that thing, on that part of this, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Right now I want to look at that story. I want to look at this story in 3 different lights, okay? So the first one is we're going to look at some ordinary people. Then we're going to look at an extraordinary God. And the third thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how God takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary, okay? So first of all, let's look at some ordinary people. Let's look at Noah, okay? Let's look at Noah here, and a lot of times we get caught up on this idea that Noah was awesome. Noah was a great dude. He was an awesome dude. Look at that ark he built. Look at that thing that Noah did that made him awesome. He was extraordinary. And sometimes we take that beyond just Noah, and we look at what I'm going to quote as the heroes of the Bible, right? We look at David and Goliath. We look at Moses and Noah, and we say, man, those dudes were awesome, right? You can even add Peter and Paul and James and John to that list, and we look at them and we say, man, those dudes were awesome. Those were some extraordinary dudes. But were they? Were all of them extraordinary by themselves? And so as I was thinking about that, I started looking at Noah, and I was like, you know what, fine. I'm going to find a way here. I'm going to find how Noah was an extraordinary person or wasn't an extraordinary person. And so as I was reading, I was looking at it in the eyes of ordinary people, extraordinary God. And I started noticing that nowhere in that story does it say that Noah was particularly extraordinary. Okay? Look at the ark, for example, building of the ark. Now, I don't think God chose Noah because he was an extraordinarily good builder or architect or carpenter, right? He wasn't extraordinarily good at building boats. That wasn't Noah. Noah wasn't that guy, right? I don't think that's why God chose Noah. I'm sure there was somebody else out there that was a better woodworker than Noah. But God still chose Noah. All right, so take a look at the animals. Read a little bit forward, and all these animals that came to Noah, 2 of every living creature, male and female. How did that happen? Do you think that Noah went out and collected those animals? See, in my head right now, I'm thinking, in order for Noah to be extraordinary in this moment here, collecting these animals, I'm picturing Noah as Dr. Doolittle, okay? I'm picturing Noah as like walking in, and he walks up to these animals. I don't know, maybe they're in a cave, walks up to them, and he's like, all right, guys, look, you can understand me because obviously I can talk to animals, and we're gonna go hang out on a boat for a while. God's gonna flood the earth, and you just gotta trust that you're just gonna come on this boat with me, right? And the animals are like, oh, okay, no, yeah, okay, that's fine, I'll go with you. No, Noah wasn't extraordinary at communicating with animals. So then I think maybe, okay, whatever. Maybe Noah is like a trapper, right? He's really good at like trapping animals or taming animals. And so then the next picture I see in my head is Noah walking through town, rope in each hand, and on the ends of those ropes are 2 lions that he's tamed. And he's just like walking through town with his big old lions. And he's like, no, guys, don't worry. These are my lions. It's okay. I got these lions. I'm going to go take them, put them on a boat, hang out these lions on a boat. No. That's not Noah. Noah wasn't extraordinary at taming animals because Noah was just an ordinary man that God chose to do something extraordinary through. And so now I want to hit on this point because I know it's in some people's heads right now. It's in your head that in Genesis in 6:9, the first verse of that we read, it says Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. And so you're looking at it and say, all right, there you go, Jeremy, see? Noah was a righteous man. He was righteous in the eyes of God. God chose him because he was righteous. And real fast, I want to explain to you, I want to talk about the fact that Noah was a righteous man, okay? Because Noah being righteous, and to me, does not mean that Noah was any more extraordinary than you or I. Noah was righteous in the eyes of God, and that is an extraordinary thing. But if you are a Christian, if you have been saved by Jesus Christ, if you believe that you were born again with a new heart, a new spirit, then you also know that you are the righteousness of God. Right? In 2 Corinthians 5:21, Paul says, he made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. You see that? If you were born again, if you were saved by Jesus, you have the righteousness of God in you. You are the righteousness of God. So that means that while that's an extraordinary thing because you're no longer an ordinary human, you are an extraordinary human because you have God's righteousness in you, you have God living in you, that also means that Noah was no more extraordinary than you or I. He was just an ordinary man that had a relationship with God. And okay, next part of that verse, you say, all right, fine, Jeremy, I'm behind you on the righteousness, okay? I believe that, I see that. But the next part of that says that he was blameless among the people of his time. And you're going to say, well, I might be righteous, and I'm saved, and I have the righteousness of God in me. I am the righteousness of God, but I'm not blameless. I still mess up. I still make some mistakes. And now I want you to go look at chapter 9 of Genesis here. Because in chapter 9, Noah does something, okay? In chapter 9, Noah gets off the boat, and he makes the right sacrifices, and it's pleasing to God. And then Noah builds himself a vineyard. And he gets drunk, and he gets naked, and it's a whole thing, okay? But I don't know about you guys, but Noah getting off the boat and then celebrating and getting drunk does not sound like Noah was blameless to me, right? Doesn't sound like Noah doesn't make mistakes. Doesn't sound like Noah's a perfect man. That sounds like an ordinary person. Just got a little bit too excited, a little bit carried away with the situation that he was in. Right? Your struggles might not be getting drunk and getting naked. That might not be the struggle that you have. But that doesn't mean you don't have struggles. And it also doesn't mean that Noah didn't have struggles. Right? Because Noah did, clearly. Noah was not a perfect man. So God didn't choose Noah because he was extraordinarily righteous. He didn't choose him because he was blameless. He was perfect. That's not why God chose Noah, because he wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect, and while he was righteous, he's no more righteous than you or I. So then the last part of that says that he walked faithfully with God. And at the end of in a little bit, I'm going to make the point that God chose Noah because Noah was walking with him, because Noah had a relationship with him. He was trusting him. That's why God chose Noah. Noah wasn't extraordinary. Noah was just an ordinary man. But our God is extraordinary. So let's take a look at how our extraordinary God worked in this story. Okay, the three things that really stood out to me in the story are the same three things that kind of point us towards the fact that Noah is ordinary and that God is extraordinary, are that the ark got built. Right? Noah didn't do that by himself. I don't think that Noah even knew how to do that by himself. But God did. God showed Noah the way. He told Noah what to do so that Noah could build that ark. Because God's extraordinary. Then I think about the animals that came to Noah, right? Noah didn't have to go collect the animals. If you look at verse 20 in there, it actually says that the animals are going to come to you to be kept alive. God said, Noah, I'm going to tell the animals to come to you. I'm going to command the animals to come to you, and you're going to keep them alive for me. Because our God is extraordinary. Noah didn't have to go collect those animals. They came to Noah because God commanded them. And the last thing that I want to hit, and I don't want to miss it because I think it's important for us to not skip the fact that the ark had to be built for a reason. While the ark itself is awesome, and the fact that it was built by Noah and the animals came, those are extraordinary things. But do not forget that the ark had to be built because God flooded the earth. The earth was flooded it was completely underwater. It was destroyed. Everything was destroyed because God flooded the earth. That's extraordinary. That is an extraordinary thing. That is a thing that happens outside of the ordinary. And while in that time, it might not have looked like a particularly great thing in that moment. Living among Noah, you might not think, man, if the earth flooded tomorrow, I'd be pumped. Probably wouldn't be excited about that. It doesn't seem great in the moment, but it was still extraordinary. And now we look at it and we think, man, God did extraordinary work through that. Great work through that. All right? So that's just in the story of Noah, we can see God working in extraordinary ways. And so it's easy to think, you know what, that happened back then, right? This is Genesis, right? The first book of the Bible. Back then, God did extraordinary things. I don't really know if he's still doing those extraordinary things now. What does this have to do with right now in my life? So let's take a little trip. It's going to be quick, brief trip through the Bible, through some history of God doing extraordinary things. Okay, I've already mentioned a couple of them. Right? You want to talk? We talked about Noah here. Let's talk about Moses. Right? Is it not just the fact that God spoke to Moses through a burning bush? That's pretty extraordinary. But like Moses' dude Aaron turned the staff into a snake and then back into a staff because God did that. God tells Noah he says, you know what, tell Aaron to throw that staff down. It'll turn into a snake for him. And then God says, you know what, tell Aaron to take that same staff and go touch the Nile. It's going to turn to blood. That's extraordinary. Those are extraordinary things that God is doing. Then we take a look at David. David slaying Goliath. This giant that everybody was afraid of. The entire army was afraid of this dude, and David slays him. That's extraordinary. Little shepherd boy goes and slays a giant. That's extraordinary. Okay? All right, maybe you're like, all right, that's just the Old Testament, Jeremy. Still in the Old Testament. You're still living back there. Let's move into the New Testament. Let's talk about Jesus even. You want to talk about amazing things that Jesus does, extraordinary things that Jesus does? Feeds the 5,000, right? With some fish and a loaf of bread. Turns water to wine. Makes the deaf hear. He raises the dead. Jesus did extraordinary things. And I do not misunderstand me, because Jesus was extraordinary. Jesus gets to be extraordinary because, in fact, Jesus is God, right? God in flesh. But he did the extraordinary things for the people, for the ordinary people of that day, of that time. God did the extraordinary things in and through and for the ordinary people of that time. Okay? Let's look at some ordinary guys in the New Testament that God does extraordinary things through. Look at Paul, look at Peter, the book of Acts. Those are ordinary dudes. I'll focus on Peter for a second. Peter is the same dude that denied Jesus 3 times. And yet, God still does amazing, extraordinary miracles through him. Ordinary dude turned away from Jesus that God is still using to do extraordinary things. I don't think that God is done doing the extraordinary. I believe that God's not done doing those extraordinary things. Right? We can see it in the Bible, and still you can say, man, that's the Bible, dude. That's a long ways away. But I can see in the little things in my life, some of the little details in my life, I can see God working in extraordinary ways. So I'm going to share this story with you guys. If you guys know me, you know a little bit about me. When I was 18, I had brain surgery. Okay, I had an accident. It led to an emergency brain surgery thing. It was a big deal for me. Very life-altering situation that I was in. Okay. Now, this story is not about me. It is a little bit about the accident, but it's not really about me. It's about the people that were around me in that time. Okay, because I didn't have much control in that time. I wasn't the one making the calls of what was going to happen after the accident. They were. Okay, and I had these friends they were all swimmers at Asbury, and so they were all lifeguards naturally, because if you swim, you're a lifeguard too. I don't know why, but they were all swimmers. They were all lifeguards. They were all trained in first aid. And if you know much about first aid training, you know that if someone has a fall where they hit their head or may have hit their head, you're supposed to leave them alone. You're supposed to leave them there so you don't make the injury worse, because if you move them, that could actually make the injury worse. And so I promise you, all of my friends had this knowledge, because they'd all done first aid training. I'd taken first aid classes with them, okay? And for some reason, when I had this accident and they decided to put me in a car and drive me to the hospital instead of waiting for an ambulance. And they're by no means nurses, but they still knew that that's not what they should have done. They should have waited. They should have waited for an ambulance to come get me and put a neck brace on me and to take me to a hospital so that nothing got worse. But my friends didn't do that, okay? They drove me straight to a hospital, and they spent probably the next 12 hours there in the hospital. And they've been telling me stories about this for 7 years now. I'm 25, and they tell me these stories. And one of the stories that I've heard the most is from different people of how angry the nurses and the staff of the hospital was, how frustrated they were with my friends for not calling an ambulance, for just driving me to the hospital. They were belittling my friends for that choice because that was the wrong choice, and all of my friends knew that was the wrong choice. And it kind of all led to a point where when I got out of surgery and the surgeon had come out to tell them that I was going to be okay, I'm here, that I was going to be okay, he found the friends that had put me in the car, and he went to them, and they have told me they were expecting another person to say, look, you guys need to call an ambulance when this stuff happens, if it ever happens again, whatever. That's not what happened, though. The surgeon came up to them and he said, why did you do that? Why would you have brought him here? Why would you have put him in a car when you know better? You guys all know better than to do what you did. And one of them, Jesse, one of them said to him, I just felt like that was the right thing to do. I don't know why. I know that I shouldn't have done it. I know that I should have just left him there and called an ambulance, but I felt like that I needed to put him in a car and take him. I felt that was the right thing that I needed to do in the moment. And the surgeon looked at her and he said, well, it's a good thing you did that. If you had waited for an ambulance, he probably wouldn't have made it through surgery. And when the first time I was told that story, it kind of just went over my head, and I was like, you know what, okay, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. Probably would have panicked. They didn't panic. Really happy about that. But I don't know what I would have done. I might have put him in the car too. I don't know. But the farther out I got from that, the more I realized that I don't think that she made that decision on her own. You know, I got a tattoo about a year later that says miracles in Hebrew. It actually says nifla ot el, which is Hebrew for, one translation would be miracles, but more directly translates to amazing and wondrous acts of God. And so, as people ask me why I would do that, why I got that, a lot of people think I got it because a few doctors have said that it's kind of miraculous that I survived the accident that I survived. It's not for that. I don't get it for the accident itself. That's to me is not a miracle. God didn't say, you know what, Jeremy, fall off the car. You'll be better for it. No, I got it because I've learned that it wasn't my friend's choice to put me in that car. They didn't have the knowledge to know that I wasn't going to make it. They didn't know that I was as hurt as I was. But that feeling that they had, that thought that they had that was, you know what, this is the thing I got to do. That was God. That was God working through them to do something extraordinary. And it truly is extraordinary to be here, to be able to stand here and be as healthy as I am today. That is an extraordinary thing. And so I can tell you, I don't think God is done doing extraordinary things. So then we got to ask ourselves, why? Why does God choose people? How does God choose people to do extraordinary things through? How does God choose who is going to do the extraordinary things? Or who he's going to work through? If it's not because we're extraordinary people, right? It's not because Noah was an extraordinarily righteous person or that he was perfect. How does God choose who he's going to do his works through? And I'm going to tell you right now that God chooses who he's going to do works through by people who are walking faithfully with him. I told you I was going to come back to that, right? I told you that we were going to come back to Noah walking faithfully with God. That last part of that of verse 9 there. God tells Noah what's going to happen. And he uses Noah to do extraordinary things because Noah was in a relationship with him. See, God took an ordinary Noah and made him extraordinary. He did us extraordinary. He didn't make him extraordinary. He did extraordinary things through him. Right? Because God takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. Look at all these people and all these stories in the Bible. All of these, the men that I talked about before, and I'm just going to stick with David, Noah, and Moses. Look at them. And think about, what do you think the first thing that you think when you hear these names? When you hear, you know what, in 1 Samuel, David, I think David and Goliath, right? David and Goliath, David slays a giant. When you think of Moses, you think of burning bush. That's what I think of, burning bush. Then I think of Moses parting the Red Sea, the extraordinary things that Moses did. When you think about Noah, I almost can't say Noah's ark all in the same thing. Because I think about Noah's ark when I think about Noah. The extraordinary thing that Noah did. But how often do you think about the ordinary man that Noah was? Or the ordinary man that Moses was? Think about that with Moses. Man, Moses wasn't a great speaker. Really had issues speaking. Moses wasn't a great leader. Was convinced that he was not the right guy to do this because he wasn't confident that he was good enough for it. Moses was in exile. He was in exile because he messed up. He made mistakes. Because he didn't think he could do what God was calling him to do, and yet God did extraordinary things through him. David was a little shepherd boy. How often do you think about David as a little shepherd boy that was only there when he fought Goliath? He only went there to bring his brother some snacks. But you think about how extraordinary that thing was that David did. Because God took these ordinary people and made them extraordinary. So God chooses these people because they're walking faithfully with him. It's one of the easiest things to see. For me, it's in the story of David and Goliath, right? There's a verse where David says, you know what? Yes, that guy is bigger, but my God, that guy's big, but my God is bigger, right? Goliath is big, and those armies are scary, but dude, I've got God on my side. I've got this. Because David trusted God. Moses argued with God the whole time. He said, God, I'm not the right one. I'm not the right person for this. And yet, God used him. And eventually, Moses was like, you know what? Fine, God. If you think I'm the right guy, if you think I can do this, I'm going to trust in you. I trust you to work through me. So God did. And guys, I promise you that God is not done doing extraordinary things in this world. He's not done with us yet. All we've got to do is trust God. We've got to trust that God is going to work in us and through us. And it might not be in the Noah's Ark kind of way or the parting a sea kind of way for all of us. It might not be. But in your life, in your heart, in the community that you're in the little details of our lives, God is going to do extraordinary things if we're willing to trust him. And I want you guys to hear this, because this is something that happens here in this community all the time. Our pastor, Justin, he does this a couple times. He's done it a couple times where in our second set of worship, after the message, he gets up afterwards and he says, he tells us about some visions that God has shown him, some stuff that God has shown him. And don't worry, he doesn't actually know I'm talking about this, but I'm going to do it anyways. He shares visions with us, and it hasn't been just Justin. It's been Daniel and some other people in our church that have shared visions of things that people needs that need to be met in this church, in this community. And he asks that, he doesn't even really ask us, he just tells us that those are things that he feels like God is ready to do. He feels like God is going to work in some ways. And I've been in a unique opportunity to be a part of the prayer team where I get to see people, I get to see God work in people through those things that Justin's talking about. I get to see God working through Justin in the lives of people in this community and through Daniel in the lives of people in this community in extraordinary ways, things that Justin or Daniel or anybody could not know on their own. And I get to see it. I get to see it happen. I get to pray with people. I get to be a vessel for God, to see our God working in these people. And I'm telling you, man, it is truly extraordinary. Our God is not done working in extraordinary ways through ordinary people. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be extraordinarily righteous, because trust me, if you've been saved and you've been born again, you've become God's righteousness. You've got that. You are already right with God. You do not have to be an extraordinary person for God to use you for extraordinary things. God will use ordinary people to do extraordinary things in this community, in your lives, in your hearts. Again, if there's anything that you guys need prayer for, okay, if there's anything you'd like to talk about as we go forward in this week, definitely let us know. Reach out to us. Reach out to somebody. We will be praying for you guys. We'd love to pray with you guys, for you guys. I'm excited to see you guys next week. I'm really excited to see what we've got coming on here next week. It is going to look a little different, but I'm still very excited to see people and be in this community again. Hope you guys have a great week, and God bless.